You run for the bus, and your knees remind you that you are, in fact, mortal. Your shins ache, your lower back tightens. Your feet hit the pavement like two wet sandbags, and somewhere deep in your hip flexors, something that definitely shouldn't be making that sound is absolutely making that sound. And you think, this is fine, this is normal, this is just what running feels like. Here's the thing nobody told you. It isn't. Running is supposed to feel like the most natural thing a human body can do, because for the first 300,000 years of our species' existence, it was. Ancient humans ran, constantly, barefoot, over rocks and roots and uneven terrain at distances that would destroy most modern athletes before mile 3. And the question that has been sitting quietly inside biomechanics laboratories and archaeological digs for the last 2 decades is one that changes everything you think you know about the human body. Did they hurt the way we hurt? The answer is no. But the reason why is stranger than anyone expected, and it involves a discovery made not in a laboratory, not in a research facility, not in any institution you would expect. It was made in the middle of the Mexican wilderness in the year 2006. And the man who made it almost didn't survive the journey to get there. Part 1. The Runner Who Changed Everything. The year is 2006. You are deep in the Copper Canyon region of Chihuahua, Mexico. The terrain is brutal. Red rock walls drop hundreds of meters on both sides of the trail. The altitude is above 2,000 meters. The sun is punishing. There is no road, there is no phone signal, there is no infrastructure of any kind. A journalist named Christopher McDougall has been walking for 3 days to reach a community that most of the outside world has never heard of. The Tarahumara, an indigenous people who have lived in these canyons for centuries, who grow their own food, who have no gyms, no running shoes, no physiotherapy clinics, no foam rollers, no compression sleeves, and who regularly run distances of 150 miles over 2 consecutive days across this terrain, not occasionally, as a normal cultural practice. McDougall arrives and watches a 52-year-old Tarahumara man named Victoriano Churro finish a 50-mile race in sandals made from old car tires, with no apparent discomfort, at a pace that would have won most Western ultramarathons of the era. McDougall goes home and writes a book that sells 3 million copies, but the scientists who read it don't care about the story. They care about one specific question the book raises and never fully answers. Why doesn't it hurt them? Then something happened. A biomechanist named Daniel Lieberman at Harvard University decided to find out. Part 2. The Harvard Lab and the Barefoot Discovery. The year is 2010. You are in a biomechanics laboratory at Harvard University in Cambridge, Massachusetts. High-speed cameras, force plates embedded in the floor, motion capture sensors, a research team that has spent months designing a study that should have been done 50 years ago. Lieberman's team is comparing the running mechanics of 2 groups: lifelong barefoot runners from Kenya, shod runners from the United States wearing modern running shoes. The footage they capture will be published in the journal Nature, and it will cause a controversy that is still unresolved today. The shod runners, the ones with the expensive cushioned shoes and the arch support and the motion control technology, land on their heels with every stride, hard. The force plate records what researchers call an impact transient, a sharp collision spike that travels up through the heel bone, into the ankle, into the knee, into the hip, into the lower spine. Every single step, thousands of times per run. Lieberman measures the impact force at roughly 1.5 to 3 times body weight concentrated into a very small area for a very brief moment. That is what your knees are feeling when you run for the bus. That is what the shins are feeling, the hips, the back. Now here's where it gets strange. The barefoot Kenyan runners land differently, completely differently. They land on the ball of the foot or the midfoot first. The heel barely contacts the ground at all. The impact transient, that sharp collision spike, is almost entirely absent. Same distance, same pace, same human body. Different mechanics, different forces, different experience of the run. Lieberman's conclusion is careful. He does not say barefoot running is better. He says heel strike running generates impact forces that forefoot running does not, and that the heel strike pattern is almost exclusively associated with the heel cushioned running shoe, which was invented in 1970 by an American engineer named Bill Bowerman, who co-founded a small company you may have heard of, Nike. Before 1970, the thick cushioned heel did not exist. Humans ran in thin-soled sandals or moccasins or nothing at all for the entire 300,000-year history of Homo sapiens and the millions of years before that. And apparently, of course they did. They ran without the cushion that the modern world convinced them they desperately needed. But the mechanics are only the surface. What is happening underneath the mechanics is older, much older, and nobody found it in a laboratory. Part 3. The Foot That Time Forgot. The year is 2018. You are at a research facility at the University of Liverpool in England, An evolutionary biologist named Carl Bates is staring at a 3.6 million-year-old set of fossilized footprints preserved in volcanic ash at Leyte in Tanzania. These footprints were made by Australopithecus afarensis, not Homo sapiens, not even close to Homo sapiens. A creature that walked the Earth 3.5 million years before you were born. Bates runs a pressure analysis of the footprint impressions. He maps where the weight was distributed across the foot at the moment of contact with the ground, and then something happened. The distribution pattern is almost identical to a modern human walking barefoot on soft ground, not heel striking, not slamming into the earth with concentrated force, distributing load across a wider contact area, absorbing impact through the architecture of the foot itself rather than through external cushioning. 3.6 million years ago, before our species existed, before language, before fire, before anything we normally associate with humanity. Something in the foot was already solving the impact problem. But here is the question Bates cannot answer. If the barefoot foot was already solving this problem 3.5 million years ago, what changed? When did we start hurting, and why? Part 4. The skeleton that should not exist. The year is 1994. You are at an excavation site in Kenya. Paleoanthropologist Bruce Latimer is crouched over a fossilized skeleton designated KNMWT15000, known informally as Turkana Boy, a young Homo erectus male who died approximately 1.5 million years ago. Latimer is a specialist in skeletal pathology. He has spent his career reading the health histories written into ancient bones. He examines the spine, and he cannot find what he is looking for. He is looking for degenerative disc disease, the compression and breakdown of the intervertebral discs that causes chronic back pain in modern humans, a condition so prevalent in the contemporary world that it affects an estimated 80% of adults at some point in their lives. Turkana Boy's spine shows none of it. The discs are intact. The vertebrae show no pathological wear. For a skeleton 1.5 million years old, the spinal architecture is almost pristine. Latimer moves to the knees. He is looking for the cartilage degradation associated with osteoarthritis, the condition that causes knee pain in millions of modern runners. Again, almost nothing. He examines other ancient skeletal remains from pre-agricultural populations, hunter-gatherers from multiple sites across Africa and Asia. The pattern holds. The joints that cause modern humans the most pain during running, the knees, the hips, the lower spine, show dramatically less degenerative pathology in pre-agricultural skeletons than in post-agricultural ones. But that wasn't the disturbing part. The disturbing part is what Latimer finds when he examines skeletal remains from early farming populations, the first humans who gave up the nomadic running lifestyle for settled agricultural existence. The joint degradation appears almost immediately. Within a few generations of the transition from movement to settlement, the bones tell a story that no one expected. Ancient humans who ran constantly had better joints than modern humans who try to avoid running, and the humans who stopped running first showed the damage earliest. Which raises a question that nobody in mainstream medicine has yet fully answered. Is joint pain from running a sign that running is damaging the human body? Or is it a sign that we have forgotten how to run? Part 5. The nervous system nobody studied. The year is 2013. You are in a pain research laboratory at the University of Colorado Boulder. A researcher named Irene Davis has spent 20 years studying running-related injury. She has worked with thousands of patients. She has seen every type of running pain that exists. And she has arrived at a conclusion that most of the sports medicine community finds uncomfortable. She publishes a paper proposing that the majority of running-related injuries in modern populations are not caused by running. They are caused by the way modern populations have learned to run. Specifically, the heel-first, heavy-impact, cushion-dependent pattern that has been the default for anyone who learned to run wearing standard athletic shoes since 1970. Davis begins retraining injured runners, teaching them to land differently, teaching them to feel the ground through their feet rather than insulating themselves from it, reducing impact forces through mechanics rather than cushioning. The injury rates in her retrained patients drop significantly. Here's where it gets strange. The runners she retrains describe something beyond the reduction of pain. They describe a different experience of running entirely. Not just less painful, different in character, lighter, more rhythmic, something that several of them describe unprompted, using words associated with flow states, with effortlessness, with something they struggle to name. Davis writes about this carefully. She is a scientist. She does not speculate beyond her data. But the data points towards something ancient healers and philosophers documented repeatedly, and modern sports science has never adequately explained. The Greeks had a word for it. The Tarahumara have a concept for it embedded in their running culture. The Lakota people described it in their accounts of long-distance running ceremonies, a state that running produces in the human body when it is done correctly. Not pain, the opposite of pain, and nobody has fully mapped the neuroscience of what that state actually is, or why modern runners almost never reach it. Part 6. The chemical ancient runners carried. The year is 2021. You are in a neuroscience laboratory at the University of Arizona in Tucson. A researcher named David Reichlen has spent his career studying the evolutionary biology of human endurance. He has run with the Hadza of Tanzania. He has analyzed the neurochemistry of long-distance runners across populations. He publishes a paper in the journal Proceedings of the Royal Society B that quietly rewrites the evolutionary story of human running. His argument is precise. The runner's high, that euphoric, pain-suppressing, almost transcendent state that long-distance runners occasionally experience, is not a side effect of running. It is the point. Reichlen's research identifies the endocannabinoid system as the primary mechanism, the same ancient neurological system that responds to cannabis, the system that has been present in the human body for tens of millions of years. When humans run at a sustained aerobic pace, the body produces endocannabinoids, specifically an anandamide, a molecule whose name comes from the Sanskrit word for bliss. The body produces its own bliss molecule during sustained running, not as a reward, as a functional biological response. A response that reduces pain perception, suppresses anxiety, increases social bonding, and creates a state of focused calm that would have been extraordinarily useful for a hunter running 40 miles to bring food back to a group. Ancient humans didn't run despite the pain. They ran because the run chemically removed the pain and replaced it with something else entirely. And here's where it gets strange. Reichlen's research shows that this endocannabinoid response is highly sensitive to running mechanics. The efficient forefoot strike, low-impact pattern produces it most reliably. The heel strike, cushion shoe, high-impact pattern produces it far less consistently. The cushion shoe that was supposed to make running more comfortable may have simultaneously made the runner's high significantly harder to achieve. We built a product to reduce pain, and it may have removed the very biological mechanism that made running painless in the first place. A shoemaker and a Tarahumara elder both understand human feet. They have almost nothing else in common. CALOSing. So did ancient humans have pain when they ran? Probably some. They were human. They had bad days, they twisted ankles, they overextended. They pushed through exhaustion because the alternative was starvation. But the chronic, grinding, joint-destroying, quit-after-mile-2 pain that defines the modern experience of running, the skeletal evidence says no. The biomechanics evidence says no. The neurochemistry evidence says no. The Tarahumara running 150 miles in sandals made of car tires says a very emphatic no. What the evidence says is that at some point between the Litoli footprints 3.5 million years ago and the invention of the heel-cushioned running shoe in 1970, something changed. Not in the human body. The human body is almost identical. In the relationship between the human body and the ground beneath it, someone decided that the foot needed to be protected from the earth it evolved to contact directly. Someone decided that the impact needed to be absorbed by foam rather than by the architecture of the foot, the ankle, the calf, the entire kinetic chain that 3.5 million years of evolution had been quietly perfecting. Maybe they were trying to help. Maybe they were trying to sell something. Probably both. But somewhere in that decision, the bliss molecule got harder to reach. The efficient mechanics got buried under cushioning. And an entire generation of humans started associating running with pain and stopping within the first mile and deciding they were simply not built for it. You are built for it. Your foot knows how. It has known how for 3.5 million years. The knowledge is in the architecture, in the arch, in the way your toes spread slightly when you land on soft ground barefoot and the pressure distributes across a surface area that a heel strike never reaches. The next time you are outside on grass or sand or soft earth, take your shoes off, just for a moment. Feel the ground through the full surface of your foot. Notice what changes in how you stand. Notice what your foot does automatically when it can actually feel what it is touching. 3.5 million years of engineering just waiting to be remembered. The answer to whether ancient humans hurt when they ran is written in your own body. The question that remains open is whether you are willing to listen to it.